I'm here interviewing May Van, a Westchester University alumna and a retired executive from Agilent Technologies. We're going to talk about strategic planning. But let's start with your background. You have had a very successful career. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Malika, for the opportunity to be here. I started my career as management accountant and financial analyst. As I climbed the corporate ladder and ended up being in controllership, I realized in order for a company to obtain financial efficiency, it really needs to have all parts of the corporation work well together, which means I had to understand end-to-end processes as well as how different functions interact. That was the point that I got really interested in various functions outside of finance and started asking really probing questions of our marketing managers and of our R&D directors, and realized that at that point that I had developed an interest in actually managing business. So I ventured outside of finance function and started into actually manufacturing manager's position, and then became plant manager. And as I was able to deliver results successfully, I eventually landed in positions that I managed businesses. So that's really sort of my career track. But if you ask me, the key to success, I would say there, first of all, is a desire to learn. You need to be able to see the big picture, not just your functional perspective. You need to actually be able to build and develop a strong team. You cannot achieve success, regardless whether you're in a functional role or in a P&L role. You will not be able to be successful without a great team. And then you have to be willing to course correct, accept failure is part of the success, the process to become successful. So you have to actually course correct as you see situations have changed. And lastly, you have to lead by example. You cannot ask your employees and your team to do things that you're not willing to do. So at the end of the day, regardless whether you ended up being the CEO or a manager of a function, I believe that those are the keys to anyone who wants to be successful in whatever they do.
Thank you. During your time at Agilent, I understand you were involved with strategic planning. Would you tell us a little bit about your experience there at Agilent in the strategic planning process?
Certainly. Agilent adopted a strategic planning model developed by IBM Business Consulting back in 2006. This model basically is saying that your strategies need to have an execution component, and you actually have to look at these two components together at the same time. And so on the strategy side, really a company or a business needs to actually start confirming or validating their strategic intent, which is usually one that a company doesn't change frequently. So the strategic intent, in the way that we view it, there are three potential macro strategies, and they are either product leadership, or customer intimacy, or operational excellence. And so the example for customer intimacy will be Zappos and Nordstrom's, and product leadership will be Apple, and certainly we know operational excellence will be the company like Walmart. For Agilent Technologies, we have obviously adopted one of our strategic intent. Once you have that strategic intent nailed down, then you need to actually look at the market insight and investigate and determine the market insight, which includes looking at your customers' needs as well as your competitive landscape. The third component of the strategy is really innovation piece. The innovation is not just in technology, it could also be in processes. And the last piece is really the business model. So business model really means who, even though you have products that you're selling to a segment of, to certain industries, but you need to segment your customers. For example, if you have decided on a product leadership strategic intent, your products are most likely going to be more expensive. What that means is the segment of your customer most likely will not be the value-driven customers who are looking for cheap me-too products. No. So you have to decide who are your products, who are your customers, how do you actually, what's the value proposition you have for these customers, how do you actually make money, and how do you actually able to make money on a sustained basis. So that's what we call the business model. So those are the 4 components on the strategy side. Once you actually have figured out those high-level strategies, then you need to develop execution plans that will enable these different pieces of strategies to be successful. And the first piece will be, once you have decided on your strategy, the very first piece of execution planning is critical tasks. What are the critical tasks and activities that are necessary for you to actually be able to execute the strategies? So, for example, we use Southwest as a frequent example. Southwest has this strategy. They're going to offer the friendliest crew, so they spend a lot of time training. That will be a critical task for Southwest Airline. And then they also have they have the shortest turnaround time, so that means their aircraft model all have to be standardized. They buy similar aircraft, so their turnaround time can be very quickly. So that's how you decide what your critical tasks are. That matches into your strategy. The next step then is identify and recruit people with the talents and the skills to carry out those strategies. So that's the second piece of the execution plan. And the third piece is really what we call the formal organization, which includes organizational structure, your reward, compensation, policies, and so really are your formal policies and procedures per se. And the last piece is culture. Culture, I'm sure that Monica, you have heard this statement, culture is strategy for lunch. And so without the right culture to support what you're trying to do and to support your strategy, you're not going to be able to deliver and execute on your strategy and successfully.
Very interesting. How frequently did your company engage in strategic planning? It sounds like a pretty intense process.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, that our strategic process is an annual process with a 3-year window. So we look at a 3-year strategy. However, unless you have either decided to make significant strategic changes, or you have acquired a company, or you move into a market segment that is totally new to you, it is really a validation. The strategy part should really be a validation or modification, and should not be from you shouldn't have to do your strategy part from scratch every year, obviously. So we do review our strategy about springtime every year, and the more intense piece is once we validated our strategy, then we actually develop a 3-year operational plan, with the first year with the most detail, and that's where the financial and operational plans are developed, and the financial commitments are actually made at that point.
What were some of the challenges that your organization encountered in the strategic planning process?
As I mentioned, so even though I just mentioned sort of that is our strategic planning process, it is actually a pretty long and drawn out one. It starts in the mid-springtime. We validate our strategy. And then once that's validated and approved by the board of directors, then we actually have to develop the 3-year operational plan and financial plan. And then it's a give and take and a reiterative process. By the time we actually have our operational plan and financial commitment approved by the board of directors, is usually already in the middle of fall. So it's sometimes a 6 months a process, so that is that could be fairly draining of a process for the entire organization.
So my last question is, what are some of the helpful tips or insight that you could offer in strategic planning?
So I would definitely say that you need to make sure, as a business leader, you need to understand the corporation's priorities. It makes no sense for you to come up with your strategies and your plans and that are out of alignment with your corporate strategies. And so that's definitely the first thing. I would suggest any business leaders to put their ears to the ground and to participate in discussions, so you know the priorities of the corporation for the next few years, and making sure somehow your priorities are aligned or mapped into those strategies. And the reason is, that's the second piece, is which then you're going to be able to get funding a lot easier if your strategies are actually mapped into the corporate priorities. So that's the first recommendation. And the second one I would say is always understanding the financial boundaries that a corporation is looking for, right? No company, especially publicly traded company, can actually significantly change their financial commitment profile. If you're expected to grow, your industry is expected to grow a certain percentage, you better fall within that range, as well as the profitability. So, and your company may have the high level financial targets already in mind, and so as you develop your strategy, you need to know what that financial boundaries are. Even if you are moving into adjacent market, you will need additional investment. Well, you need to actually find efficiency somewhere else to cover that additional investment for this new market that you're entering. So as a total business, you fall within that financial boundaries. If you do not do that at the onset of this strategic planning process, you're going to find yourself ended up having a plan most likely not approved by the senior management, and you ended up having a lot of work wasted. So those are the two pieces of recommendation I would definitely share with students of your class.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate your time and your insight. You have significant experience in this area, so it's quite helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.